This is a song from Drake, except it's not really a song from Drake.
When it's cold where I'm from, yeah, I got enemies, okay to win.
Yes, that's right. It's a track from AI mimicking Drake's voice. And for musicians, that's pretty scary.
Can AI generate true art?
When you look at art, what you want is you want a piece of that person's soul.
Not only do musicians have to compete with AI now, they also have to compete with larger and larger cuts from everyone in between them and their fans, from agents, record labels, producers, and streaming platforms. But what if there was a competing technology that not only enabled a way to prove their music is actually theirs, but also helped deliver it straight to their fans?
I was able to sell an album as an NFT collection and generate $200,000 in revenue instantly.
This week, we're going deep on Web3 music. Technology has changed the way we make and listen to music quite a bit over the last few decades, but not as fast as it is today. The first vinyl LP was pressed in 1948, and for the next, call it 50 years, the way we bought and sold music was relatively unchanged. Music was stored on a thing, a record, an 8-track cassette tape, a CD, and played on a thing, be it a turntable, an 8-track player, a boombox, and who could forget the Walkman?
Whether they wear pinstripes or no stripes, they're discovering that, at least musically speaking, you can take it with you.
And that's pretty much where things stood until Sean Parker unleashed Napster on an unsuspecting music industry, destroying an entire generation's willingness to pay for music. And in the early 2000s, even heavy metal band Metallica went the legal route to sue Napster to cut off free song file sharing before it became rampant.
With Napster, every song by every artist is available for download at no cost, and of course with no payment to the artist, the songwriter, or the copyright holder.
But even with artists in the recording industry up in arms about downloading, it wasn't until people saw they could get sued themselves that things started to change. One of the biggest losers of the free music era was Jamie Thomas Rassett, who downloaded 24 songs illegally. Wait, that's it?
Yeah.
Huh. The single mom was made an example of in order to pay nearly $2 million to music giant Capitol Records.
I still haven't been able to wrap my head around the fact that it was almost $2 million.
Wow. And with that, the free music era came to an end. But there wasn't putting that convenience of downloading music back into the box. It just needed to be done legally, giving rise to iTunes and the iPod.
The coolest thing about iPod is that your entire music library fits in your pocket. I happen to have one right here in my pocket, matter of fact. There it is, right there.
But today's problems for musicians don't have as much to do with how many songs you can fit in your pocket, as much as they do with how they get there. Streaming giants like Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube now basically entirely own that distribution. In fact, as much as you might love any one particular artist, it's probably been over a decade since you paid directly for any one song. Instead, now there's a whole tech giant that sits between you and them. The pro is streaming on a platform is a pretty awesome way to get your song in front of millions of listeners. The con is it's a pretty shitty way to earn a living.
Spotify pays close to 70% of its revenues to the people who own the rights to the music. That's usually the recording labels.
The amount artists receive on a single play is minuscule. On Spotify, that number is somewhere around 0.004 cents per play.
Yeah, a fraction of a penny per stream seems like a tough go for any artist, let alone those who are just starting out. And Spotify even publishes that data. According to the company, there are about 200,000 active musicians on the platform, and only about a quarter made more than 10 grand last year. That shitty pay has up-and-coming musicians looking for an alternative to circumvent the whole damn system. And they might have just found it.
Well, I was able to sell an album as an NFT collection and generate $200,000 in revenue instantly. It sold out right away. That is the equivalent of, let's say 50 million plus streams on Spotify.
That's Spottie Wifi, a rapper who's been dropping songs for the crypto community he's a part of. But the Web3 music platforms that are enabling him to do so have ambitions far beyond the crypto world. Instead of platforms sitting on top of record labels, on top of agencies, sitting on top of musicians, new Web3 startups like Sound, Royal, and Audius are offering musicians the ability to get back to the ways of old by letting artists drop songs directly to their fans. And as Sound's co-founder David Greenstein tells us, there's a pretty important distinction there because it's a bit more intimate.
You're supporting an artist on Spotify by streaming. It goes into a pool of money that then gets divided up, which is a little bit different to the iTunes CD era where you are literally purchasing directly to this artist.
And cutting out the middleman is an idea that appeals to big and small artists alike. As a musician himself, that's actually what led DJ and producer BLAU to found Royal, a platform that lets musicians share in royalty streams with their most engaged fans. As he told us, it lets fans become collectors, and collectors become investors in the music they love.
And an example of this is what the Chainsmokers did with us, where they actually gave away ownership of their album. They gave 1% of their album to 5,000 fans. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but the idea that the fans really own the album, whether they get paid $2 or $10 on it, doesn't really matter. It's the idea that they actually own something real that's associated with the artist that they love. And historically, fans, listeners, believers, all alike, have only been able to consume music. They have never been able to share in the ownership of music.
Did that blow your mind? Because it's worth saying again.
You can either pay for a subscription on Spotify, you can pay 99 cents on Apple for a license, you can pay for merch, or you could pay for a ticket. Introduce any layer to that is ownership, and I think everything changes.
And that's the wild part, because as much as it seems music has changed from the cassette to the CD to streaming, it's all still kind of the same from a vibes perspective. And yes, that's a scientific term. As listeners, streaming is obviously way more convenient for us all. There's no scratches to deal with, and God forbid, no rewinding. And that's kind of the exciting thing about Web3 music. It's the most direct way for a fan to financially support their favorite artist, short of Venmoing them. And it's not more efficient just for the fan, but for the first time, it's also more efficient for the artist, according to music investor Coopahtroopa.
At the end of the day, it's really just about efficiency. If I stream or buy an NFT from an artist, being able to pay them in real time is actually a huge unlock. And while it might seem very simple, I think that's the core thing that distinguishes Web3 music from the traditional music industry today.
Look, there's something to be said about the limits to efficiency. And that's weirdly where we get back to AI Drake and the dangers of ultimate efficiency, where disembodied AI is pumping out bangers faster than you can download them. And if all you care about is the euphoria you get through your headphones, well, then AI Drake might not concern you any more as a listener than Degrassi Drake. But if you're a fan of the artist behind the music, then supporting them or actually knowing which songs are coming from them might be worth verifying as we move into a bold new frontier.
It just made me start asking myself questions. It's like, does Drake own his voice? What happens if he does own his voice? Do you take it down? With that said, I think it's somewhat inevitable. I think the only thing I always say is you can't fight innovation.
After the AI Drake track started blowing up on Spotify and YouTube, Drake's record label, Universal Music Group, jumped in to take it down. They also put out a shot across the bow for anyone looking to continue down the AI path, saying, quote, "The training of generative AI using our artist's music, which represents both a breach of our agreements and a violation of copyright law, begs the question as to which side of history all stakeholders in the music ecosystem want to be on. The side of artists, fans, and human creative expression, or on the side of deepfakes, fraud, and denying artists their due compensation." And if that all sounds familiar, it's not too different from the same issues Metallica raised over a decade ago.
Is there an upside to downloading? My answer is yes. However, as I hope my remarks have made clear, this can only occur when artists' choices are respected and their creative efforts protected. Thank you very much.
I'm Zach Guzman. This was Coinage. Stay safe out there.